The first acknowledgement of our collaboration was from Jeremy Rice, the artistic director of Bark & Gecko Theatre Company in Western Australia. I was commissioned to write a play for children in 2007, and Vivienne Glance and I were jointly commissioned to transcreate it.
In 2008, Afief and I were invited to Playwriting Australia's Canberra workshop to work on his play, The Son of the Sun. After that, he was selected for the Australian National Playwrights Conference bursary. In 2010, The African Magician was produced by the Bark & Gecko Theatre Company in Western Australia and was nominated for the Australian Writers Guild Award for Best Children's Play in 2011.
I was so lucky to be working on The African Magician because I was given the script and the performance is set in an African village. Now, how do I transcribe that beautiful African village? And I have worked in Africa, so I understand the environment. But how do I translate that as a designer with all its subtlety for an Australian audience? But with the process of transcreation, a lot of that work had been done for me already, so it wasn't just the words of dust or sand that have very different meanings to us than it would be for an African country. So I had lots and lots of clues, but it was also how I could honour all those elements and all the subtleties and bring them alive on a stage. And I think that's what is so important with Afief's work, is to really bring the depth that you want to for children. Because with all Afief's work, whether it's an adult production or one for children, he really honours and respects the audience that he has. So he doesn't play down to it. And because of the transcreation, I was given so many finite clues for that, which made my work a lot easier.
In 2012, our second transcreated play, Son of the Nile, was produced by Nexus Theatre and directed by David Moody and Tim Bryan.
So Afief's play was very different because it was set in Africa. It had a wonderful African folkloric and mythic background. It was, in style, it was very different. It was much more focused on a kind of storytelling style, where the audience were addressed directly, where there was a kind of openness to the audience. There was much more physicality to it, and a kind of exuberant physicality. And so there was a different kind of community created within the theatre. But African theatre has a much more extroverted way of performing, like several Latin American theatres, Spanish theatres. So there was a sense in which the actors had to relearn their body, the way they used their body. And for them, it was an extremely challenging but fun kind of experience because they were allowed to play on stage. The characters were different because, for example, we were doing a lot of transcreation, and the central character was a kind of African superhero, and our students brought their own understandings of what superheroes were. So that itself was a kind of transcreation. We had a kind of crossover between people who were brought up in DC and Marvel, and they were meeting this different kind of African superhero. And it was really interesting to watch that engagement. So we brought I thought, a real kind of African sense of play and magic to the audience. And the audience was very loud. There was a real sense of engagement. And the actors found that tremendously liberating. So they had a great time.
Concurrently in 2014, his 3 short plays, 3 Seeds, was produced by Always Working Artists and performed at the Blue Room Theatre in Perth, Western Australia.
In 2012, it seemed as if the African magician cast his magic once again and paved the way for a global recognition of the transcreation.
New York University invited Jeremy and Afief to work on a presentation on cross-cultural collaboration for the International Forum Which Way TYA, Future Directions in Theatre for Young Audiences.
There were certain times during rehearsals where you could really see that the benefits of transcreation was still at work during the rehearsals. We were really bringing the village alive by being informed by Afeif's knowledge, by his cultural knowledge. The performers really had to take that on board in their bodies. And I think any of that information that came through that cross-cultural reference only strengthens what you're performing to an audience.
Kim Peter is the artistic director of children's theater at John F. Kennedy Arts Center in Washington, D.C. In 2014, Kim Peter introduced me to Dr. Manon van de Water, member of the Executive Committee of Astage and the International Theatre for Young Audiences Research Network. We met several times at Astage gathering in USA and in Europe. I was so excited to visit the land of some of my favorite writers like Ernesto Sobato and Jorge Borges, also activists like Che Guevara, from whom I got my youthful revolutionary wisdom. Be realistic, demand the impossible.
It was such a breath of fresh air to be able to just jump into an African writer's world, and especially one that's so connected with the issues that most African countries are dealing with at the moment. And it just felt like it was a world that I'm still trying to make sense of, and it's still a world that's very worth talking about, very worth putting on, and very challenging for an audience as well. He doesn't write work that's easily digestible. It really leaves you still unpacking and trying to put the puzzle together. And as a performer, that's a beautiful place to be, when you know that you're creating work that's relevant and that gets an audience to just really do their work as well, because it's not about entertaining people. It's about hopefully planting a seed where they're able to learn a little bit more about our continent of ours, and also kind of celebrating the things worth celebrating about on our continent.
Some of our other trans-created plays have been produced for adult audiences in Australia. Transcreation has given me wings to fly with my works all over the world, and to be a voluntary ambassador for the culture and civilization of the Great Black Pharaohs. I have exchanged knowledge and cultural experiences with other artists from around the world. Also, several books of my trans-created poetry have been published.
We've also presented workshops at children's literary festivals, and we developed The Son of the Sun at Playwriting Australia's Canberra workshop.
I just read a wonderful essay by Arundhati Roy where she says that language itself is made up of all other languages. The idea that there is a pure language is just ridiculous. All languages are hybrid, and all art is hybrid. So the notion that you should separate any art from other arts or other languages or other cultures is just absurd. The wonderful thing about Afeif for me is not only the fact that he brings a different sensibility, but the fact that his theatre and his poetry is just great as theatre and poetry.
I think it's so essential, because the more we allow as diverse a range of voices to the table of storytelling, the more we all benefit, the more we learn about realities that aren't our own, the more we appreciate culture that aren't our own, and the more we, I think, embed a kind of appreciation for the unknown.
I always say that people with similar artistic interest will find their way to one another, regardless of culture, race, language, or other differences. It's just pure human connection from the heart to their soul, from one mind to other. I think I have been very fortunate to meet and work with Vivienne Glance, a great and generous soul. We look forward to continue our ongoing Transcreation partnership and to enrich the multicultural life of Australia.